And the problem is that it's just not possible. When you run those numbers, it's just not far enough. And it's important to think about why that is. And why that is because of the systems upon which we depend. And it's worthwhile looking specifically at cars, because cars are really the sort of icon of our lack of sustainability today. And when we think about cars, right, we tend to think that the answer to having these horrible polluting machines that we need to get us anywhere in our current society is to invent better machines, right? This is the Aptera, which I think is pretty much the coolest green car that anybody's come up with so far. It's, you know, it's absolutely incredible. It gets something insane like 250 or 300 miles to the gallon equivalent. But you know, people driving the Aptera and living in suburbs and living exactly the way we live today would still be destroying the planet. And how can that be so? Well, it's because the real problems with cars are not under their hoods. The real problems with cars are the systems that make car ownership possible, right? Our vehicle emissions, what's coming out of our tailpipe, is only the smallest fraction, or a small fraction, of the total impact of our cars, right? You have to think about all the highways that are built, of all the, you know, parking lots. There's an area that's larger than the state of Connecticut in the United States that's been paved for parking. You know, you need to think about the you know, oil that's leaking out, the fluids that are leaking out, the brake pads that are wearing away, the rusting vehicles in junkyards, the collisions that happen, et cetera. Then you need to actually start thinking about the broader system, because it's true that having car ownership is also responsible for, largely responsible at least, for the gain in weight that we've seen in America. It's a leading cause of death, car accidents. So when you're thinking about cars, you need to think not only about what's in the hood, but all of this other stuff that makes up the system of car ownership. And we're not going to get to sustainability by simply changing what's under the hood of those cars. So personal change won't do it. The swap won't do it. None of the solutions we're used to hearing about on a regular basis are nearly enough. If we are going to get to a one-planet prosperity by 2030, if we're even going to have developed that model, we need to take a leap into the unknown. Let's try and think about what that might be like. What might it be like if we actually got to a one-planet world? What are some of the tools that we could use to build that? First, I'm convinced that a one-planet future will be a world of dense urban communities. We are used in the United States to thinking of cities and the environment as opposite each other. I think at this day and age, it's getting more and more clear that if you're going to really be a credible environmentalist and you don't live in a compact community, you've got some splaining to do. And the most sustainable form of transportation is not having to go anywhere in the first place because what you need is close at hand, right? It's how we build that determines how we get around. Good urban design dematerializes trips, infrastructure, and healthcare. When we build good, compact neighborhoods, we make stuff that we're wasting now go away. And here are two maps from the Sightline Institute. The map on your left is of Phinney Ridge, and the map on your right is of a newer suburban community. The shaded area is how far you can walk in 1 mile. Guess who drives more? Right? Guess who spends more on transportation? Guess who has a higher ecological impact in getting around? It's really pretty obvious and clear, actually, that density is the biggest tool we have for changing our transportation patterns. Vancouver, through their eco-density program, has started to actually drive down the number of people who even own cars. In downtown, 40% of households are now car-free, 70% of trips are by foot or other alternative transportation. Fewer cars are entering downtown. People in the Vancouver area are driving less every year. It's actually working in a really demonstrable way. And we know how to build compact communities that are quite livable, that in fact are quite lovely. We know how to build new communities like the Pearl District in Portland that actually, offer an increase in quality of life. And people want this. There's this demographic shift going on that we know about where younger people are choosing to live in urban communities over suburban communities. And older people, empty nesters, are starting to move back into cities, where we're seeing, for example, now, in the midst of a housing bust, dense urban neighborhoods are holding their value even as suburban communities in those same places are dropping through the floor. And we don't need to imagine that the world turns into a biker's utopia in order to imagine that density offers us some leverage for change. We are about to completely remake our cities. When you look at population growth, demographic shifts like the one I just talked about of younger people moving into urban communities and choosing urban lives, the massive infrastructure backlog we have, estimates range from $1.5 trillion to a lot more than that, like $5, $6, $7 trillion. The normal real estate churn, people building new homes, tearing old homes down, remodeling, we are going to actually be rebuilding about half of our urban environment by 2030. So even though we're used to thinking of cities as things that don't change very much, that's not going to be true in the next 2 decades. We're going to be changing a lot everywhere. And that change gives us the opportunity to imagine channeling that growth, channeling that change to build compact communities everywhere and to really leverage density in every community in America. That would not only free us from the auto dependence that we have today, but it would make realistic all sorts of other alternatives, including transit, and offer us a real ability to leverage other breakthroughs that we're getting. So one of them is efficiency. We are learning how to build things, the same things, much better, right? Green building. We can already build zero energy buildings. This here is the Jubilee Wharf in the UK, designed by Bill Dunster. It uses no outside energy whatsoever. There are buildings being built all over the world that are zero energy. Some of them use a fraction of the water. Many of them use a fraction of the materials to build in the first place. We're seeing all sorts of breakthroughs in terms of not only green design, but materials and prefab building. It's really incredible what we're being able to do. We're pushing the envelope farther and farther out. Now, what we build still matters more than where we build, or where we build still matters more than what we build. If you are building a green McMansion out in the suburbs, you are going to be less effective in your life than living in a conventional multifamily unit. Lots of people have done these studies from lots of different perspectives, and they all wind up the same, that the most important thing is density. But once you've got density, if you add efficiencies like green building, you start to be able to make these gigantic leaps. Right? And now we can do something that's even cooler, which is we can add to that density and to the kind of efficiency that you get in green building insight into the way things work. We want to surround ourselves with systems that remind us to make smart choices, because we all actually want to make smarter choices. We're just overwhelmed with other extraneous information that prevents us. It turns out that when you put the information in front of people, they change behavior very quickly. One of the most interesting examples of this, to my mind, is the fact that you can make 2 identical models of car. If you put a mileage meter in one of those cars and not in the other, the one with the mileage meter gets better mileage than the identical car without a mileage meter. And the reason for this is what they call the Prius effect, which is that as people see the mileage on their dashboard, they start to try and push that number up. They start to try and get better performance. And essentially that mileage meter teaches them how to become more effective and efficient drivers. And it turns out that that's true of almost everything. Bringing energy meters inside the home reduces home energy use. In the UK, they found that it's 10 to 12% without doing anything different. So without any more insulation, no new light bulbs, no nothing, if you're seeing your energy use on a daily basis, you use 10 to 12% less energy because you realize, I don't need to leave that light burning over there. We're using more energy than we did last week. Let's push it down. Being able to see what you're doing, right, turbocharges the performance of things that are already efficient. And it does more. It allows us to use things that used to be hard to use because we had to pay attention. Right? We've always known, or mostly always known, that using natural light, using natural ventilation is preferable to artificial light and heating and so forth. Right? But it's been difficult to imagine designing those buildings in the last 50 years, and even more difficult to imagine the people who use those buildings thinking about how to operate them effectively. We now have smart buildings that are very good at that, where you don't need to pay attention because the system itself is paying attention, and you can set it for the kinds of performance you want.